deliver in December this year and to hit the screens in April 2016, and that's The Jungle Book. It's the biggest show that MPC has worked on to date, and something that we're all really excited about. To mention another couple of big productions across other locations. In Vancouver, we're working on Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, which is something that, again, everyone's super excited about, and some really cool work coming out of the Vancouver facility. In Montreal, it's been a busy year. The studio hasn't been open very long, but again, we're still pushing out some big shows, and recently just finished Terminator Genesis. So you can see across all of at least the MPC locations, we do offer opportunities on huge projects, whichever studio you end up working in.
I thought maybe just give you a little second to catch your breath. We had a few questions that came in last week for the webinar on a variety of subjects. So maybe just run through a couple of those. Nora, maybe you can share your thoughts on what they've asked. Paul Dolan wants to know a bit of advice on moving from another industry into visual effects, because we've got a few people joining us tonight who aren't necessarily just out of college and looking for the first role, and maybe looking to move across from a different industry. Paul works in games, and curious to know what's the best route to try and move across from the games industry into visual effects. Are those skills transferable, and what's the best way to try and break in there?
Okay. Well, thank you, Paul, for your question. We have definitely hired people from other industries into film visual effects. I'd say people making the transfer from the games industry into film. We've definitely had a lot of people within our digital map painting team, and some modelers as well. And I think regardless of your prior experience, sometimes it's a case that you need to tailor your application to what our studio is looking for. And I think if you are able to show us any personal projects where perhaps the work that you're showcasing is more live action visual effects based, if you were working in 3D and you were a modeler, for instance, I know in games it's common to do a lot of hard surface, perhaps weaponry. MPC, we're quite well known for our creature work and our character CG, so being able to demonstrate something that's a bit closer to what it is we do is always going to help. Now, I know from kind of previous work experience, sometimes it doesn't translate exactly, but showing us any kind of personal projects will definitely help in bridging the gap, and getting to know the software tools as well in that particular discipline will definitely help, because sometimes, again, if you've worked on one particular package within the games industry, it may not be the same thing that we use in-house here at MPC. So if you can get up to speed on those, that would be fantastic.
Thanks, Mike. Just on in terms of software, Arafat, who's joining us tonight. Hello, Arafat. He's asking about Maya. I mean, Maya is in almost every job description that you see, not only at MPC but at most visual effects studios. In terms of getting into compositing or roto, what sort of degree of expertise do you need in Maya? And maybe, if it's not too long a list, is it worth just quickly running through the key packages for visual effects for a studio like MPC?
Yeah, sure. So for compositing specifically, at MPC we use Nuke. That is our main film compositing software, and it is something that is used throughout the industry. So I think if you can get to grips with Nuke, I think we're at Nuke X10 at the moment. It's only going to benefit you because it's what all the studios are using. In the past, there's been a variety of different pieces of software that have been used, but yes, Nuke is definitely the main one for compositing. In terms of Roto, I know a lot of people tend to also, especially when they're starting out, do a lot of Roto work within Nuke. At MPC, we actually use a package called Silhouette. So what I would say is, in terms of software packages, sometimes it can be very difficult to get access to various different licenses. If you're able to kind of push your universities or lecturers to kind of grab a license for any of the software packages that I'm mentioning, then it will benefit, because it seems like a lot of studios do use the same packages. But in terms of Roto, just going back to that, we have hired people within Roto that haven't had experience in Silhouette, because I know it's one of those that's not as readily available. Looking into other tools and software packages, Maya is something that is, again, extensively used throughout the industry, and something that our animators are all using. Katana is what we use as our lighting tool. We do have a host of off-the-shelf proprietary tools that the different departments use, and I think sometimes people can almost worry that if they don't have experience that they won't be considered for a job. I think if there is ever a piece of software that isn't available on the market that we only use in-house, we're more than happy to consider people that haven't got experience in that piece of software, and we will give you training as soon as you come in the door at MPC.
Okay, we've still got a few more questions coming in. Mike, one question that's coming up a few times is to do with visas. Harsh Godera, who's an Indian national, is just asking about being offered a job outside India, getting a work permit. How much of a pain is that to go through, and how does that process work with a company like MPC?
So with work visas, I think looking at the different locations that MPC are in, it only makes sense for us to take a huge responsibility in helping you obtain a work visa. Now, sometimes, and it does vary in terms of what your nationality is, but sometimes a work visa can take 4-6 months sometimes, and I know in particular for Indian nationals going into Canada, in the last few months we had a few people that we brought on board, and their visas were taking around 4 months' time. So as long as we have a position within the team that starts with a good 4 or 5 months lead time, then we would always be more than happy to consider people kind of from outside the local market for any of these positions. We do have an in-house immigration team that are experienced and qualified in handling all aspects of work permit and visa transfers. In terms of cost, as long as we've hired you, MPC would cover full cost. And just kind of moving on from that, if you were moving from India, for instance, and you'd secured a position with MPC in either London, Montreal or Vancouver, we'd also cover the cost of your return flights and give you 2 weeks accommodation on arrival in whichever location it is, as we appreciate starting a new job can be a stressful enough experience, so hopefully the assistance with the relocation helps with the relocation.
Yeah, cool. It's clear. Another question that's coming up quite prevalently, which perhaps no surprises, about showreels. Clearly, anyone who's applying for a role with MPC or with any studio wants to present their best work, and it's not always clear how to best do that. Just in connection with that, it's probably worth just saying that we have just put up a couple of compilations on our website, which is www.moving-picture.com. If you click on the Join Us button, there's a little section there called the Deal on Rails, where we've put up a couple of compilations for our lighting and compositing candidates who have applied and successfully applied to our MPC Academy, which we'll come on to talk a little bit about as well. But maybe it's worth, Mike, just talking quickly through, if someone's sitting there with all their work, how do they boil that down into a reel? How long should it be? Should it be mute? What order should they put stuff in? If they're applying for multiple disciplines, should they put different work, highlighting different skills? Is there a key set of guidelines you can share just to help people, when they're looking to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So show reels, it's a question that comes up time and time again, and for us, I think seeing the best of your work is what we want. I think if you're, and again, this is probably more relevant for the graduates, but you may have come out of a degree course and it could be a year to 3 years long, and within that time you probably would have covered a variety of different disciplines, and I think trying to tailor your show reel to the particular discipline that you're applying for is one thing that I would always recommend, and then making sure that you're showing us the best of your work within that discipline. So for example, if you're applying for a compositing position, it's not going to be beneficial for you to be showing us some animation tests from kind of a first year student project that you worked on. I'd say keep the work on there that you're proudest of, what you feel showcases your ability the best. And I'd always recommend putting the best shots or turntables at the beginning of your show reel, because we want to be drawn in rather than trying to find the hero shot, the best shot, and having to wait right until the end of the show reel for that. What I would say in terms of graphics on the actual reel, giving us an indication of what you've contributed to the project is always good, even if it's just a little note in the corner whereby you're saying roto, cleanup, prep, compositing, whichever aspects that you have contributed, do just note them down in the corner. Sometimes you can work on student projects when you've got 8-10 people all contributing something to the short film perhaps. You become so immersed in it and you know exactly what you've done, how well you've done it, but to somebody just looking at it for the first time, we might not be totally sure exactly what it is you have done. So just a couple of little visual aids are definitely recommended. In terms of length, I'd say a minute and a half as kind of an average is a good length. I know some people, especially in the more technical, perhaps rigging or groom or character, creature TD type roles, there can be a lot of the more technical aspects that you want to showcase as well. So when you're showing the work you're doing in your scripts, perhaps having almost like a breakdown separate to your reel can be beneficial, because I know sometimes the reels that have the deep back end script visuals in there as well can be quite lengthy. So keep it succinct, eye-catching. In terms of music, to be honest, it's not something that you'd ever be judged on, your choice of music. It is purely about the quality of your visuals. And whilst we are on kind of the reels and the application process, I will briefly mention CVs and also cover letters as well. And people ask, are they relevant? Do you look at them? Yes is the answer. In terms of your CV, I'd say keep your creativity for your show reel. I do appreciate this is a creative industry and you want to showcase it as much as you possibly can, but keeping it on a A4 piece of paper, white, preferably online, digital copy. But all we need to know is kind of your previous work experience history, any qualifications that you do have, and insight into the software packages and tools that you're able to use are always beneficial, and that's pretty much the bulk of it. Obviously, being able to find your email address, your contact phone number is always beneficial, and to get an idea of whereabouts in the world you are as well, because sometimes we are hiring for people globally, and it is good just to know before we can speak to you in terms of work permit processing times and all those kind of things, how long it might take somebody. So I'd say keep it simple for your CV, leave your creativity for your show reel. Cover letters, I know it's a great opportunity for almost giving us an insight into you as a person, but again, try and keep it relevant to the job application, so giving us an insight into why you want to work in visual effects, why you want to work for MPC specifically. We have had instances where people have sent me an application and sent it through the MPC website, but they've been saying how much they want to work at double negative throughout their cover letter. So those little things, they make a difference, so just take your time. Hopefully you don't have to apply to too many jobs in your lifetime, and I think just taking that little bit of time over your application really does go a long way.
Okay. We'll catch your breath for a second.
Yeah, thank you.
We've got quite a few questions coming in. Just to say, we'll try and cover off as many as we can. If we're unable to, we'll try and take pick your questions up after the session. But we've got a few more coming through. One from Andy Lefton is quite interesting in terms of remote working. Is there ever an opportunity to work remotely for an artist, or is that something that's a bit of a no-no?
So it's been a question quite a few people have asked me. It's not something that we do, and it's not really something that is totally governed by MPC. I know a lot of our clients are obviously quite particular about the security measures and the content that is going outside of kind of the four walls, so to speak, of MPC. So it is more of a security thing more than anything. There is one department, however, that we do have people working remotely from time to time, and that's within the concept art team. Now, the concept art team is something that is again, a bit of a one-off. People work on very short-term contracts, and it's one of those whereby they may have a long-standing relationship with MPC, but in terms of remote working, I would say that is the only department that there'd ever be an opportunity, and those opportunities are kind of very few and far between, with it being such a small team.
Okay. Johan's curious about software development roles and wants to know if, for software development, do you need to have training as a visual effects artist, or is that less important? What sort of skills do you need for programming software?
So software is definitely one of those departments where we do hire people from outside of the industry. I think the transferable skills are kind of almost hand in hand with a lot of other industries, especially kind of digital agencies. We've got a huge software team here, and I know they are always positions that are very difficult to find candidates for, and I think a lot of the time it can be because it's one of those disciplines whereby it's quite different to the contract nature of an artist role. So a lot of people tend to be in permanent jobs. However, MPC within our software team, because it's something that is required kind of throughout the year, we tend to offer long-term opportunities, and it hopefully also competes with people's permanent positions outside of the visual effects industry as well. But yes, there are definitely opportunities for people from other industries to join MPC in software.
Thanks, Mike. A lot of the people who are tuning in tonight are maybe graduating and looking to get the first step into the industry. So they're sitting at home with a degree in visual effects or wherever the degree may be in. What is the best way just to get in terms of what are the entry-level roles? And it might be worth talking a little bit about the academy for Canada, maybe any plans for academy in London, and also just how these visual effects artists are able to get their first role.
So MPC have a variety of entry-level positions that are available throughout the year. Now, we first of all do hire graduates straight from university, and these are especially in our technical teams, so the likes of technical animation, groom and rigging. More recently, we've been hiring roto prep and some match move artists within the London studio, and we've had a few people who have joined as stereo compositors that have only had kind of minimal industry experience and just graduated. So there are opportunities from time to time for graduates straight from uni. However, we appreciate that sometimes there needs to be a bridge between graduating and getting kind of a fully fledged role within the industry. So around 12 months ago, MPC launched the MPC Academy. Now this was rolled out initially in Montreal and Vancouver across compositing, lighting, effects and animation. We also more recently rolled it out across our digital matte painting team. This is an opportunity for graduates to, as Glenn mentioned, get their foot on the ladder, get their first job in visual effects, and as Glenn also mentioned earlier, hopefully the show reels that have recently gone onto the website can demonstrate the type of level that these graduates have been at in order to get their first position. Now, in terms of the number of opportunities available, we look to run an academy every 3 months. Now this is totally governed by kind of the volume of work that we have. Over the last 12 months we've been very busy, so they've been quite regular, and we've brought in around 10 per department every 3 months. Now the content of the academy, we appreciate that you've got very minimal industry experience. So when you come on board, you spend the first 3 months almost in a training capacity, where you'll be sitting almost in a classroom type setup. You'll be taught how to composite, how to create effects, fluid simulations, or any of the kind of MPC styles when it comes to animating. And now this will be taught by somebody who has been in the industry for a number of years, and most probably somebody who has worked for MPC before, and they will be teaching you the MPC way of how to do these things. And it will be a 3-month intensive program, which I won't lie, it's an intensive program. You'll be given a kind of a crash course in the software that we use, if it's something that you haven't had experience using before. And then after that 3 months, should you perform well at the level required, which is set out by our heads of departments, our department supervisors and the department trainers, then you'll graduate from the academy and move into a 9-month contract as a junior artist on one of the shows. Now, the graduation rates have been exceptional, and we've really found that it's been a fantastic way of bringing more junior artists into the studio. Now, in London, this is something that we're looking to roll out over the course of this year. We will update the website with more information in terms of exact dates and times, but it's been a great success in Canada, so hopefully it will be rolled out in London very soon.
Okay, thanks, Mike. We've still got quite a few questions coming through on a variety of different subjects. One question that did come up was to do with mobility within a company like MPC. If you are multi-skilled, maybe you have talents in 2 or 3 different disciplines. Is it possible to move into one and then move across to another, or are you branded for life once you become a compositor or a lighter? Have you sold your soul to the devil, so to speak?
What I would say is that it has definitely happened. People have moved between departments. To give you an insight of the structure of MPC, we do operate on a department-based structure, and that is purely down to our pipeline, and for us, I think it's the most effective and efficient way of producing films. It also gives artists a fantastic opportunity to learn from other people within that discipline around them, whether they be seniors or junior artists, or even working on another show, perhaps on another desk behind them. Being a company that operates within this structure, it makes it very difficult once you're working on one particular show to, as Glenn mentioned, if you're a compositor, to also do some lighting work, to also, I don't know, perhaps if you are an animator, to get involved in some modelling or texturing. So I think for large-scale film production, it is something whereby a lot of artists, once you've worked in one discipline, they tend to stay within that discipline throughout their careers. Now, if you are interested in a more generalist approach, and it's something that it's more interesting to you than working within commercials and advertising, there are a lot more opportunities for that. So perhaps you could become more of a just straight 2D artist or 3D artist, where you get to kind of dabble in a few different disciplines. In terms of the type of projects you work on, it's a lot smaller scale in terms of the duration. So you could be working on a project for 4 weeks and then you move on to another project after that. So it's a lot of the time it is down to people's personalities and preferences in terms of the way they like to work. Within film, you could be working on a film project for around 6 to 9 months on one project. So it is totally about what your preference is, and exactly, I suppose, where you want to take your career. So if you do want to eventually be, thank you, Glenn,
what part of the service?
a head of department in one particular discipline, then you tend to see people have progressed through the ranks, let's say as a compositor, moving into like a 2D supervisor type position, and then going from there. But I think the more generalist type skill sets are probably found more in smaller studio setups, and also within a more commercials or advertising space.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. We're getting quite a few questions through. We'll try and deal with as many as we can over the next sort of 25 minutes or so. If we don't or aren't able to go on to your question, we do apologise, but we're getting quite a few through. One question that's coming up quite a lot is about running roles. Can you become a runner at MPC? I can talk a little bit about this. The runner roles are slightly different at MPC in that we earmark our runners for careers in production. So rather than taking a prospective artist on to become a runner, we're more likely to take on someone who's more interested in becoming a production coordinator or a producer further down the line. Whereas with some other studios, their approach is slightly different, and they'll take on a runner first of all to run, and then moving into the artist discipline. We're more likely to take runners on who are interested in production. The artist roles that are available at MPC are either junior roles, so you would go straight onto the studio floor, or as Mike was talking about earlier, a little bit of there'd be a role at the MPC Academy at one of our studios. One question that came up about the Academy as well was, do you have to be from that country in order to be considered for the Academy? Do you need to be in Canada if you want to join the MPC Academy in that country?
No, is the answer. We have hired people for the academies from outside of Canada, for instance. Now, a lot of the time, in terms of bringing people on board, work permits and visas, we will do everything that we can to help with getting people secured. But sometimes the requirements, they go kind of above our jurisdiction, so to speak, and a lot of the time it will be down to the Canadian government to kind of decide whether or not somebody is or isn't eligible. But in terms of your application, we'd be more than happy to. We'd always look at your showreel first, and if you are good enough to be considered, then we would always do what we could to help facilitate a move to whichever country it is, and for you to have a position with MPC.
Thanks, Mike. A few questions coming in. We've got Harsh again, and Anna, and a couple of other people asking about Houdini as a tool for FX. Is that something that's in use here? And
yeah, so we have a couple of pieces of software that we use within our effects team. Now, Houdini is definitely one that a lot of the team have used, and we have produced some projects with. Sometimes it is the case that the project that we're particularly working on, whichever piece of software that we're using, it may not be achieving the results that we want, so we switch over and use something else. We do also have an in-house tool that we use called Flowline, which was developed in conjunction with Scanline. Now, this is, as I mentioned earlier, one of our proprietary tools. It's something that we wouldn't expect people to have experience using prior to joining MPC. Sometimes, if we are working on a show that does require people to use Flowline, it can be a little more difficult. However, if you hadn't used it and Houdini was the only piece of software that you had used, then it would be a case of trying to bring you on as early as possible within that show. So ideally towards the beginning, when we're not at delivery stage, so you get a chance to be trained in the in-house tool and get up to speed, ready to kind of hit the requirements in terms of the shot counts and that kind of thing. But yes, people that have used Houdini are definitely people that our FX team look for.
And After Effects, is that a tool that's used at all?
So After Effects is something that is used a lot within the commercials industry and a lot within motion graphics. Now, we don't have a great deal of motion graphics roles within MPC, and especially not within MPC Film. I know that there are people that have done compositing within After Effects, but again, it's not a tool that MPC use. So if it was compositing that you were looking to do, again, I'd really kind of recommend trying to get a license or get some experience using Nuke.
Okay, thanks, Mike. You were talking a bit earlier about the generalist approach being more prevalent in advertising, and when you're in film, being more specialist. I mean, Michael has asked, is it better to be one or the other, or is that a bit of a question that someone needs to decide for themselves what they prefer to do?
I don't think there's a question of is one better than the other. What I would say is it's about what route you want to head down, and then I think it's quite clear that being a specialist, you will probably go further within film, especially within a big facility, and there'll be more opportunities open to you that you're probably more interested in if you are a specialist, if you are within a large film facility, because you're on that path to progress kind of upwards. If you do want to be a generalist, then I'd say something more along the lines, again, yes, of commercials or advertising would be more suited, because again, you are going to have more exposure to doing what you want to do if that's the choice that you take. But for MPC Film, what I would recommend would be trying to be a specialist in one particular area. What I would say though, on that point, a lot of our modelers, it's probably the only team where this happens, but because modelling and texturing work so closely, there are times when we will hire modelers and they will also have a bit of crossover in texturing as well. So in that aspect, I would say people that are kind of a bit more generalists are definitely more than welcome.
Okay, thanks, Mike. A few questions coming in about the actual process of applying for a role. The recruitment team are always talking about applying through the system online. We've got our sort of talent database where we get applications coming in. Are there other ways to apply? Would you, for example, take reels that come in that are handed in reception, or email directly to recruitment? Is there a good way of getting noticed, your work noticed, or does that just pose problems for sorting through applications? What advice would you give on that?
What I would say as kind of a first port of call would be creating a profile on the MPC website. Now, this is fairly pain-free, and if anyone did ever have any problems, then please do let us know. But from looking at it, it seems kind of fairly straightforward, and it's a case of uploading your CV, your cover letter, and your show reel, and giving us the information in terms of your availability, your salary expectations. Having all of that information in one place makes it a lot easier for us and also for our heads of department, who also have access to that information. Now, once you've applied for a position, it doesn't mean that that's your one application and that's you done. You are able to go back onto the website, you can edit your profile, and we'd encourage you to go on to update with any recent projects that you've been working on, any additions to your showreel, any changes in your location or availability. That way, we're always updated straight away as soon as anybody edits their profile, and we can go in, check what your availability is and how you're looking. In terms of, I suppose, the traditional methods, now what I would say is that applications that are handed in via paper CV at reception, they're not really necessary anymore, to be honest. We've got a quite well structured system that we work with, and digital copies are what we prefer. And I think with the volume of applications that we get every month, it's definitely around kind of 500 to 1,000 applications every month. So having digital records of when somebody's applied is definitely going to be beneficial, not just for us, but for you too.
Okay, Mike, I'm just having a little run through the questions here. We have one question which is a little bit unusual from Anna Katina, who's asking about pets. If you're relocating for another country, is it something that we would help with? It's not unusual for people to have pets that they're very attached to, and the thought of maybe flying a couple of thousand miles, leaving them behind, is something that's not particularly palatable. Is that something?
Yeah, no, of course. And look, again, I think it's not something that is part of our kind of standard relocation that we'd offer everyone. But I think anything that's making your move stressful or making it difficult for you to relocate, then we'd always want you to kind of flag it to us, rather than just saying that it's not going to be possible, so that we can look at possible solutions and routes around you perhaps thinking of not coming, and then hopefully we're able to offer some help. And there have been instances in the past whereby we've helped people with relocation packages that have helped bring family members and also furry friends over as well.
Okay, that's good. So I think everybody's an individual, really. The application is treated on an individual basis. Joseph's talking about applying for an entry role with comp or roto prep. He's 28. He's worried that he's a bit too long in the tooth for a role in terms of being entry level, but clearly age is never really taken into consideration when it comes to applications for any roles with us, and it's really down to the skills that you've got, and that's really the only basis on which you're judged. So don't worry, Joshua. You could be 58 or whatever age to apply for those entry level roles, and it doesn't really bear any relevance.
No, not at all. And we've had people. We interviewed a guy who had worked within the engineering industry for 15 years and decided that he wanted a career change, and he did some personal projects actually within compositing. In terms of what you should be including on your application for compositing, I think at a junior level we always like to see people that have got a good understanding of the basics of definitely roto and prep. But then when it comes to the actual comp work, being able to demonstrate your ability to integrate CG into a live action play. And I think whenever you apply to a company, whether it be MPC, it's always good to look at the type of work they do. So obviously we do a lot of live action feature film work, and when we look at an application, it's always about how easily is this person going to transition into the current team that we have and our current way of working, and are they able to do what it is that we already do. And if you can demonstrate those types of things, so if it's rig removal or paint outs on any plates that you might have shot yourself, and again, it's that integration of CG into the live action environment that we think really sells a good kind of junior show reel.
Thanks, Mike. So what have we got? We're 20 past 7. We've probably got about 10 minutes left. Apologies for not being able to get through everyone's questions, but hope the TV hasn't proven too distracting in the background. This is our advertising show reel and also our film show reel, so hopefully you've seen some of the work that our artists have done going across in the background. This is some advertising work at the minute. We've also probably seen Arnie coming past a couple of minutes ago from the upcoming Terminator Genesis film, which opens in July. I've got another few questions coming through, Mike, and we'll try and crack through some of those. Is there any are there any books or learning material that you would point people towards for visual effects, or is that?
To be honest, I'd say there are a whole host of books available through Amazon, and I know there's a lot of really kind of expensive books out there as well. What I find is always a fantastic platform are blogs. So I know Concept Art World for the concept artists out there, and also the matte painters is fantastic, and it gives you a real insight into people in the industry and what they're doing sometimes in their spare time. It gives you an idea of the type of styles that are particularly trendy at the time. I noticed that question came from a matte painter. Things that are quite, I suppose, in vogue at the time. There are definitely instances where throughout the years, and I know this has happened within concept art, that styles have changed and what our clients look for are slightly different to what they looked for 10 years ago. And I think the quality of work is always improving. MPC actually have a kind of showcase of some of the work that's come out of our art department, on our website. Now, hopefully that can give people an insight into the type of style that we look for in terms of our artists, what it is that they produce that gets them a job with MPC. And I think on the concept art side of things, it does tend to be kind of bringing that still image to life, trying to create movement within a still image, and having a great understanding of Photoshop obviously always helps as well.
Okay, Mike. One question that's come up a couple of times here as well is just, is it realistic to expect people to get into the visual effects industry in film without experience in film? I think a lot of feedback we're getting here is from people saying, well, I haven't got the experience to show that I've worked in film. Is it still possible for me to get a role?
Yes, is the answer. It makes it harder because I suppose you have to look at your competition, and for kind of every person that might not have experience in film, sometimes there might be two others that have. But I think, again, it's going to be down to the quality of your work and the way it's executed. So you look these days anyway at the kind of commercials that are, see, this isn't a commercial behind us, but the quality of the commercials that are coming out from MPC and from other studios as well, and they're super high quality, and I think making that transition can be quite easy. Sometimes, and I know it's a question that comes up a lot, people that have always worked within feature animation find it difficult to transfer into visual effects. Now, I think some disciplines, yes, it can be quite difficult, especially the likes of compositing, whereby you may not have been used to working with a live plate, a live action plate in the past. Everything is kind of full CG. However, in the more kind of animation-based departments, there definitely is a lot of crossover, but again, it's about your execution and being able to demonstrate that your animation for a live action feature film, for a piece of CG, perhaps a character that we're working on, is going to be fitting with the style of the show. And I know a lot of kind of feature animation work can be a lot more exaggerated when it comes to the type of animation. So being able to showcase that you are able to work perhaps more subtly in your style of animation will definitely help.
Thanks, Mike. Another question that's come up a couple of times. This one I'm reading out is from Olga Cherkaskaya. Hopefully I've got your surname right there, Olga. It's to do with, again, our candidates who are perhaps multi-skilled. Are they best to decide what they are, assuming they're applying for a film here where they have to go down a particular discipline, are they best to go and apply for every possible role, or should they focus on what they think they're best at, or should they just focus on what they think they're most likely to get offered, or is there a strategy there when it comes to putting in the application?
Well, again, I would reiterate that if you are applying for film, trying as much as you can to focus on one particular discipline. Now, if you do have a particular interest in another department, if you are able to, when it comes to your show reel, perhaps tailor your work to different show reels, then it could give you an opportunity then for, when you apply, showing us the best of work from both sides, and then it's down to us between the team and between the heads of department in perhaps animation and rigging to decide which one you are actually better at. What I wouldn't recommend is applying for every job on the website, because then it kind of we can see exactly what you've applied for, and if your application is sensible and it does make sense, there are definitely those things that there are crossovers between, and you do apply for animation and technical animation and rigging. That's not going to be something that we would ever judge you on, but then I think it's our job afterwards to see which one you'd be best suited to, and sometimes it may be a case whereby we may only have an opportunity available within one of those disciplines, and that's the one you end up going forward for an interview and perhaps end up staying in forever, or perhaps it's the one where you get your first taste in that particular role and realise that it's the other discipline that you really want to do.
Okay, another question about show reels from Robert, who wants to know about using tutorial-based content. So they may have done a degree and then gone home and started to use tutorial-based content. Is that frowned upon when it comes to looking at a show reel, or is that sort of considered okay?
I think, again, with the tutorial-based stuff, sometimes it can be that you've used it and 10 other people have used it for a very similar style of show reel, and I notice this a lot, especially with graduating classes, perhaps from a university whereby they've all used the same tutorial, and it could be a polar bear and they're doing an animation walk cycle with it, and there's very little to differentiate between the first and the 10th show reel. So trying to be more creative is something I would recommend. It's not something that is frowned upon by any means, because if it's the highest quality of the work that you've got, then that's what we want to see. But trying to be as individual as you can with your work will definitely help in getting you noticed.
Okay. Are there any opportunities with previews at the minute? Chris wants to know. I think there are a number.
So previs is one of those departments whereby there are a huge amount of opportunities throughout the year, and they tend to come in obviously right at the beginning of a show to help kind of with the whole setup. Now, when you look at a studio like MPC, we've got 18 films in production at the moment, so there are always going to be shows that are starting. As Glenn mentioned, there are a few opportunities available at the moment. I would definitely recommend looking onto the website at the open vacancy for previs. One of my colleagues, Christina Zervos, looks after the recruitment for previs, so she'd be able to kind of follow up with any of the applicants in terms of the next steps.
Okay. Okay. Look, we now just hit 7:30. I'm conscious of the fact we've had quite a few questions through. We've tried to pick out some of the key themes that were coming up on a recurring basis. There, we weren't able to answer everybody's questions, but do feel free to email the team. The address is recruitment@moving-picture.com. We're more than happy to pick up individual queries if you've got any burning questions after the webinar. Similarly, both myself and Mike are on LinkedIn, as well as the rest of the recruitment team from MPC. So I think one of the important things that I think Mike mentioned earlier in terms of getting on in the industry is trying to build your network of contacts. So do feel free to link in with myself and Mike, and you can harass us on LinkedIn as well as via email. Hopefully you find tonight's session to be useful. So it's one of the first times we've done something like this at MPC, so we're very happy to take your feedback in terms of what we covered off tonight or didn't cover off, and if there's particular areas that come up quite a lot in terms of what you would like us to give feedback on or give advice on, we can look at that for a further session. I know there's been quite a few of you joining us from all around the world tonight, from Peru and Nicaragua and Canada and mainland Europe. But we're going to have to leave it there this evening because we're running out of time. So again, hopefully you enjoyed that session and we find it useful. We'd like to have your feedback, and for Mike to say his goodbyes. He's been doing most of the talking, but yeah.
Thank you, Glenn, and I'll keep it short. Thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to catch up with you again soon.